It's over. It's finally happened. The moment that PSG have been dreaming about since the Qataris took over all those years back. PSG are finally European champions, and they've done it in the most dominant fashion I think we've definitely ever seen. I don't think there's ever been a Champions League final this dominant, right? By one single team. And I don't think we'll ever see a final as one-sided as this one again. PSG have just won tonight by 5-0. 5-0 against Inter. A final that was touted by so many as so close to call, so evenly balanced, so difficult to predict. But over 90 minutes, I'm sorry, it's been anything but difficult to predict. It's been anything but well fought. It's been anything but tightly contested. It has been, to put it quite frankly, belt to. This is a team in Inter that I think before the Champions League semifinals were played, they were the best defensive team in the entire tournament. They had barely conceded throughout the entire tournament, but they've just conceded 5 goals over 90 minutes. And I think there's a lot of different ways we can go with this review. A lot of different ways we can go with this, but I think a guy who deserves massive credit today is Luis Enrique. Luis Enrique, I think, as well as PSG's players played, as well as the individuals did, and they had their chances to make it 6-7, I actually think Luis Enrique coached a perfect game today. Because when you're up against Simone Inzaghi, right, individually, PSG clear Inter. They clear them. Player for player, the best players play for PSG. So on paper, this isn't a tightly fought game. But the reason why Inter have done what they've done all season, and they've done it throughout the years, is because of how good they are as a unit, how well coached they are. But I'm sorry, Enrique has just schooled Inzaghi today. And I don't think that's something you say very often. Inzaghi is one of the best managers in Europe. He is. This is going to be a huge blip on his resume. It's going to be a blip on his name. But he's one of the best coaches in Europe. Today, he has just been ruined. Ruined by Luis Enrique. From minute 1 to minute 90, PSG were the far superior team in nearly every single metric. I think at halftime, I looked at the stats. 67% possession to PSG. 13 shots to 2. 5 shots on target to 0. 300-something passes to 100-something. They absolutely wiped the floor with them. And I think that first half genuinely could have been 3 or 4-0. It's a really bad day at the office for Inter, but this is just the perfect performance from PSG. And quite honestly, I think you have to say they deserve it. PSG today, and I think throughout the tournament, have just been such a complete team. They've been so balanced. They have the attacking spark that Barcelona do, maybe not to the same level, but they balance it out by being still a very solid defensive team. And they keep the ball as well as almost anybody. And ultimately, that has been the difference throughout that campaign. That midfield three of Ruiz, Vitinha, and João Neves have just been stellar. And today, this was a performance. I'm not talking about quality before you guys go crazy. But in terms of style, this reminded me so much of Barcelona versus Man United in 2011. One team that just kept the ball for fun, while the other could not even breathe around them. That, to date, was the most one-sided final I ever saw. The final at Wembley when Man United lost 3-1 to Barca. It was just like a complete schooling, right? No shame about it. Barcelona, that team, in my opinion, is the best team I've ever seen in my life. It might be the best team I've ever seen in my life. You look at the names on display compared to the Man United team that was playing in that final. It was men versus boys. This is similar in terms of style. Inter could not get near PSG today. Vitinha, look, I think Doue is going to win man of the match. 2 goals, an assist, Dembele as well too. But Vitinha ran this game from start to finish. Barella, Çalhanoğlu, Mkhitaryan could not even get on his level today. He was that clear of any other midfielder on the pitch. But the forward line as well too. I mean, Kvara leaving with a goal. Doue leaving with 2 goals. I mean, putting his name in the history books. The third, I mean, he was at one point the second youngest goal scorer in a Champions League final, or third. And now I think he's the 4th because the kid at the end scores. But Ousmane Dembele, maybe the Ballon d'Or favorite after tonight, potentially. We can talk about that in another video. But Ousmane Dembele, a complete performance from an attacker. All that was missing was a goal. Running the game from deep, picking up the ball all over the pitch, running at players, playing players through, creating chances, dazzling, dribbling past guys. It's the Ousmane Dembele show, and it quite simply has been ever since Enrique made the decision to change his role from a winger into a false 9. And that role, ultimately, that change in position, has ultimately been the catalyst for everything PSG have done this season. They are the most fluid team in world football. They are the most balanced team in world football. They are the best team in the world, in my opinion, at keeping the ball. And they are very worthy winners of the Champions League. And especially on tonight's display, man. What a performance. I mean, you even look in that first half, right? Inter are usually so good at getting the ball from back to front. They're so good at building up from the back. But the way PSG stifled them from their press, from minute 1 for the rest of the game, it must be suffocating. DiMarco has just played the worst game of his life. The worst game in his life. From a defensive point of view, the guy has been ripped apart. Ripped apart. But even on the ball, he couldn't get anything going. Every single time the ball comes out to him in build-up, Hakimi is following him like a shadow, pressing him high up the pitch in his own half. And then defensively, Desire Doue has just absolutely ripped him to shreds. And I'm really disappointed with DiMarco because although he's not a typical defender, right? He's more of a wingback than he is a fullback. We get that. But there's still defensive fundamentals that you have to stay true to yourself. Stuff that you're taught as a kid. Doesn't matter what position you're playing. One-on-one, you can never afford to turn your back the way DiMarco does, especially in a final. It's so poor from DiMarco. And it's an easy finish from Desire Doue, deflecting off DiMarco into the back of the net. I mean, Jan Sommer conceding 4 near-post goals today. 4 is ridiculous. Is absolutely ridiculous. I think the substitutions Inzaghi made as well too, less than impressive. I think a lot of them came too late. I think substitutions need to be made at halftime. And you know what this final reminds me of? This final reminds me of Spain 4, Italy 0 in the Euro 2012 final. Italy came into that final as very defensively compact, good in possession, not the most, they couldn't match up to Spain in terms of individuals, but they were still a damn good unit. And Spain just ran them off the pitch. They just passed them off the park, honestly. And in fact, it's similar because Bissek comes on as a sub, comes off a few minutes later. I think Thiago Motta did the same thing in that final as well too for Italy, if I remember correctly. But yeah, just so uncompetitive, man. I'm really struggling to think right now. Is this more of a PSG masterclass or is it just an Inter flop? I think it's a mixture of both because as brilliant as PSG were, we have to say from Inter as well too, this was a non-contest. And I actually wonder, what did Inzaghi tell them before the game? What was said in the dressing room before the game? How did they train in midweek up to this game? It actually looks like they didn't prepare for this whatsoever. It's baffling how badly they got outclassed today. Dumfries, who was so crucial against Barcelona in the semifinals, was genuinely a non-factor. Lautaro Martinez, who's been stellar up to this point in the Champions League, you could be forgiven for forgetting he was even playing. No impact on the game. The midfield at 6s and 7s. Sommer in goal. So good against Barca. Seemed like he was conceding every single shot that was on target. Where was the team that played so well against Barca over 2 legs? Where was the team that all tournament long defensively had been so resolute, so compact? Which leaves the ultimate question. Were we robbed of the actual final? I think it's a valid question. Would Barcelona have given a better game to PSG than Inter tonight? I think it's almost impossible to say no. And at the end of the day, right, football doesn't cheat anybody. Football always gives you what you deserve. I'm a firm believer in that. But I'm sorry, right? I think everybody said beforehand that the neutrals final would have been Barca-Inter from a spectacle point of view. But I even think from a quality point of view, I think Barca-PSG would have been a much better final. Now, that's nothing to do with Inter. Barca had to get their business done. They almost did. They choked at the end. The rest is history. But when I watch that final, this is going to be the worst final I've ever watched in terms of uncompetitiveness. It's a bad final. No two ways about it. And I just think Yamal versus Doue, Flick versus Enrique, Dembele versus Rafinha, Pedri versus João Neves. I think it would have been a much better final. This is really disappointing for me, man. It's been an amazing Champions League. Honestly, this is one of my favorite campaigns from start to finish. I think there's been so many storylines. I think the excitement has been so brilliant. But that final for me is a massive letdown because you never want to see a final ended like this. It's just like, there was no point in even playing it. It was a non-contest from minute 1. But that's nothing to take away from PSG because they were absolutely sublime today. Now, what does this mean for the Ballon d'Or? Because I think everyone in my chat wants to hear about that. What does this mean for the Ballon d'Or? Does this make Dembele the favorite? No. I think it certainly kind of propels him to a very, very strong position. You look at his season, particularly in the second half, how many players have been better than Ousmane Dembele in 2025? I think you could struggle to name more than one. I think he's been flat out ridiculous in 2025. Since he moved into this free role centrally, it's been different, bro. It's been absolutely ridiculous. Then you add the silverware as well, too. He has the silverware. He's a treble winner. He might even add a Club World Cup on top of it. The performances, even past the output, has been ridiculous. The statistics have been ridiculous. Ousmane Dembele is a fully deserving winner of the Ballon d'Or this year. If he wins it, not a single person can complain because he has been important. He has been statistically great. His performances have been amazing, and he has the silverware to back it. What can you say against him? It's an amazing redemption story for Ousmane Dembele, a guy that a year ago looked like his career was going nowhere. The World Cup final was almost like the ultimate black mark against him. And in a year, every potential, every prognostic that we had about Ousmane Dembele has been fulfilled. It's a beautiful thing. And I hope he does win it. Honestly, I would love to see Yamal win it as well too, and we'll talk about Yamal. But if Dembele wins it, I'll be very, very happy. Dembele is an amazing player, and it's an amazing story for him as well, too. Lamine Yamal is still in it, and ultimately, when we're talking about Ballon d'Or as well, too, right? This isn't why Yamal would win it, but it also matters. Narrative matters, guys. And the thing with Dembele, right, is his PR in the game is not as high as other players. His PR is not as high as other players. It's a reality. Yamal's PR right now is extremely high. He's the new kid on the block. Everybody loves him. He's so fun to watch. He's must-watch television. He performs in the biggest games. All the legends love him. Dembele don't have the same love as Yamal does in the media. I don't think so. However, that's not to say about Dembele doesn't deserve it, but I also think Yamal, the performance level, the quality, the big moments, I think he's also a very, very big favorite for this award. I think those two are fighting for it. I think Rafinha will still be here. I think Pedri is still there. And I still think Salah has a point to be made. I think he's currently on the outside looking in, but I think those will be the fifth. I think those will be the five. So yeah, I think Dembele has just taken a massive step towards winning that award. Now, if you think so, so be it. But I definitely think he's a big, big favorite for it. Big favorite. Luis Enrique. I want to give a huge shout out to him, just like I did at the start. I think he coached a masterful performance, but I also think his coaching all season long has been instrumental to this PSG team. All season long. And I think it's also a big redemption year for him as well, too, because you look at Luis Enrique over the last few seasons, and personally, I think his stock had taken a little bit of a hit. Yes, he has the treble win in 14-15 for Barcelona. But before that, at Celta and Roma, it's not like he was pulling up trees with either of them. And then after that 14-15 season with Barcelona, I think most Barca fans will tell you, I think Enrique massively underwhelmed. I don't think Barcelona achieved as much as they should have with the quality that they possessed post 14-15. And I think a lot of that has to do with Enrique. He left the club, ended up coaching the Spanish national team. Again, not the most convincing performances throughout his tenure there, right? I mean, you look at the Euros in 2021, that was decent. I won't disagree with that. Was he also in charge in 2022 of the World Cup? Or was that, no, that was someone else, wasn't it? 2022, or was he the manager in 2022? It was Enrique. Again, disappointing the way they went out to Morocco. And then last season with PSG, I know he made a Champions League semifinal. I know he won the league. But again, it really wasn't great from Luis Enrique. I was less than convinced. But this season, I'm sorry, you got to give Enrique so much credit. Losing his biggest player, losing his best player, and still managing to form a team and coach them to the level he has this year. Yes, they're great individuals, but more so than anything, they're a great team. Vitinha said that halfway through the season. He said, this is the best team I've been a part of since I've joined PSG. It might not have the biggest names, but it is the best unit. And I'm sorry, that's coaching. That's tactics. That's setup. And that's Luis Enrique. And I think the story of his daughter as well, too, who we all know the story about tragically passing away the way she did, and finding the motivation and finding the inspiration and using her life as inspiration rather than tragedy. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing what Enrique has gone on to achieve this season. And I give him full credit, bro. Full flowers. What an unbelievable season for him. Now, for PSG's project, let's talk about it. They've made history. This is the result of over a decade-long search for the Champions League. QSI, the Qataris, took over the club in, I believe, 2011. And since then, have invested so much time and money into this club in the hopes of finally lifting the Champions League. Whether it was the first edition of PSG, with the Zlatans, with the Thiago Silvas, with the Pastores, transitioning into the Cavanis, into the Neymars, into the Mbappes, into the Di Marias, into the Messis. And what resulted? Failure after failure after failure after failure after failure. Yes, they swept up the league. Yes, they won the domestic cups. But everybody who knows PSG, everybody who knows Nasser, everybody who knows the Qataris knew the Champions League was the ultimate goal. And so manager after manager after manager were sacked. Player after player after player were sold. Player after player after player were bought in the hopes of finally achieving their ultimate goal. And one thing I've heard all season, right, is, oh, I actually like this PSG team because it's not like the same superstars anymore. It's more like homegrown players. And I've kind of laughed at that all season because really, this is still one of the most expensively put together squads in world football. It's the highest wage bill in all of world football. So this is hardly some underdog story, right? But at the same time, I think PSG deserve massive credit because although it's still expensive players, although they're still spending a lot of money on the squad, I think the method, the way they've approached things is definitely a lot healthier and it's definitely a lot more conducive to not just success, but long-term sustainable success. Because although they're still buying stars, although they're still buying big-name players, although they're still breaking records to bring players in, they're bringing in players that matter. They're bringing in players that care about the project. They're coming to PSG for the sporting merit, for the sporting project, more so than just coming to Paris for the lights, the stars, the money. That's the reality. Yes, they're still expensive players. The best players in the world always cost a lot of money. But look at the players they're getting now. Barcola, Ousmane Dembele, Joao Neves. Pacho, I think, is also a recent signing from them as well, too. These are players, Desire Doue, domestic players, players from France, players that would have grown up over the last 10 years in love with PSG, in love with the players that they were bringing, invested in PSG, looking at PSG as the best team in the league, hoping that they could come to PSG and bring them glory. They weren't joining PSG because someone approached them with an infinite cash fund. They can go to any club in the world to do that. They're joining PSG to further the project. And I think that's massively important. And you look at the players they want to continue bringing in, the likes of the Konates, for example, the Franco that they're buying from River Plate now. It shows you that it's a great sporting project that they have now, even more so than just a lucrative city, a lucrative shirt, lots of money to throw at players. They're building a squad for now, but also a squad that's poised to dominate for the next few years. And I think they deserve massive credit to Luis Campos, who has come in and completely changed the way this club approaches transfers. No longer are they the days now where they throw $400,000 a week at Ander Herrera to come in as a super sub, basically. No longer are they throwing money at Gianluigi Buffon for one last payday, Dani Alves, Lionel Messi. With all due respect to all those players who are all legends of the game, every one of those guys are mercenaries. They are. And Messi's my GOAT. Y'all know that. I love Messi. He was a mercenary to PSG. He used PSG to stay fit for the World Cup. It's a fact. Buffon came to PSG just to have one last chance of winning the Champions League. He doesn't give a shit about PSG. He doesn't. Most of the players PSG have bought over the last 10 years have just come for the money, for the stardom. But the players that they've formed in this team are, yes, very expensive, but they're much more likable. They're much easier to kind of get behind because they actually love the club. They actually love the project, and it's evident in the way that they play. And it's evident in the fact that they have made history and finally broken this drought. So shout out to all of them, man. And they're young. I like that as well, too. It's a young core. It's a young core, man. That's a great point. It's a great point. And there's a lot of underdog stories as well, too, man. Vitinha, his transformation from a Wolves flop to one of the best midfielders in world football. Incredible. Ousmane Dembele, I already spoke about it. What a remontada that's been. Marquinhos, he's been at the club from the beginning. I think Marquinhos joined in 2014, 2015. No one has experienced more failure, more heartbreak on a catastrophic level than Marquinhos. He's been involved with all of them. The remontada, the Man United game, the Bayern final, the Real Madrid tie. He has been involved at everything, bro. Marquinhos has seen it all. And I've been critical of Marquinhos over the years, man. Seriously, I actually think he does have his fingerprints along a lot of PSG's exits. He is at the scene of a crime for a lot of them. But hey, I think this season, right? Him and Pacho formed a really good center-back partnership, and I'm happy for him because he's stuck through the hard times, man. He's seen it all at PSG, so I am happy for him, bro. Desire Doue. You know, I mean, as I call him Desiree, right? You know, because me and him are really tight, right? You know, it's just me and my guy, you know. I was actually telling him in this moment, I was like, Desiree, huh? Somewhere at the near post, he's very, very vulnerable, and he said, say no more, I got you. 4 near post goals today. I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying, me and my dog Desi. I call him Desi, actually, bro. You know, me and him are pretty close like that. I call him Desi. But yo, Desire Doue. What a way to really announce yourself. Obviously, this season has been a true breakout start. A breakout season for Desire Doue. People knew who he was at Rennes, of course, right? And he's had great games throughout this campaign. And look, he's basically displaced Bradley Barcola from the PSG team. That's one of the best wingers in world football. But this game in particular has put his name firmly in front of everybody. We're now looking at Doue as not just a good young prospect, but this is a guy poised to take over the game. Like this next generation, Yamal owns it, right? Let's put Doue in that second tier in terms of youngsters that are coming ready to take over the game. Let's put Doue in that conversation. He's coming. In fact, he's already arrived. Today is a proper I'm here moment. I've arrived moment. 2 goals and an assist on the Champions League final. What a stage to do it. And I've said it about Doue all year, right? The skill, the ability, the confidence, the maturity. But more so than anything, what I love about this kid, right, is the showmanship. This kid wants to entertain. He wants to put on a show. He wants to get people off their seat. He attempts things that most players will say it doesn't really matter, right? Like, I don't need to do this. Let me get goals. Let me get assists. And that matters, of course. But for him, it's not enough to just be effective. It's not enough to just score goals. It's not enough to just assist. He wants to do all of that, while still entertaining the fans, while still doing things that get people off their seats, while still making fans dream. I love players like this. And it's why I said Neymar, his legacy is being lived on the pitch by this next generation. Desire Doue is like the baby version of Neymar. I'm not saying he's on Neymar's level. I don't think he is. I don't think the talent level is similar. But the way he plays, you can tell this is a player that has massively been impacted by the way Neymar played. I absolutely love watching Desire Doue play. And I'm so happy that today, maybe more so than anybody, it's his day. It's his moment. Because there's been a lot of days where it's been Donnarumma's day this year. It's been Dembele's day this year. It's been Vitinha's day this year. It's been Nuno Mendes' day, Hakimi's day. I think today is Desire Doue's day, man. Shout out Desire Doue. And then finally, I mean, we have to address it. Kylian Mbappe. Please rise. The court today hereby finds you guilty of running away from the grind, joining the champs, leaving empty-handed, and letting your ex dunk on you in this fashion. I find you guilty on all fronts. This is bad. This is very bad. Now, I'm not gonna say this ruins Mbappe's reputation or his legacy is finished. I'm not gonna go on and say all of that, right? Mbappe is one of the best players in the world. He's one of the best players I've ever seen. And at the end of the day, Mbappe could never win anything another day in his life. And he's still a World Cup winner. He's still a guy that scored a hat-trick in a World Cup. This is no scrub. This is no schmuck. However, two things can be true. Everything I just said is valid. And still, this is a stain. This is a bad look. And I'm sorry. Nobody can tell me otherwise. Nobody can look me in my eyes and say, this doesn't matter. This isn't a problem. You're making more out of it than you should. Kylian Mbappe leaving PSG after literally asking for everything to be given to him at that club, leaving on a free to join the team that spent years chasing you after they won a Champions League. And the following season, that team winning nothing while the team you left won everything. Guys, there is no way you can tell me that doesn't matter. That's not the end of the world. You're making... I'm sorry. You can't flip it any other way. This is a bad look. This is a bad look for Mbappe, even with him scoring 40 goals. Next season, yeah, Mbappe has to go into next year, bro, using this as fuel. This has to put, like, fuel in his jetpack. We need to see Mbappe next season take over. And I don't want to hear anybody tell me about the fact he scored 40 goals this season. Because I'm sorry. Football's played on the pitch, not on the stat sheet. And we watched Mbappe's season. We watched him take the first 3 to 4 months off of the season, trying to learn how to play in this system, taking Vinicius' pity penalties, and then in the Champions League against Arsenal over 2 legs, absolutely ghosting the entire 180 minutes. This was not a vintage Kylian Mbappe season. Don't try and flip it any other way. I'm happy that towards the end of the year, he got his shit together. He's going to win the European Golden Shoe. And he had some good classical performances. But as a whole, this Mbappe season was not a success. And you might say that's due to his high standards. So be it. Don't try and flip the script now. Don't try and tell me at the start of the season this would have been acceptable. And the fact that PSG have let him go. Not let him go, but lost him. And arguably gotten better. Not arguably, they have been better. They're a better team now than they were last year. Wow, I thought the pressure on Mbappe was big this year. Next year, if you think there was pressure on him this season, next year, if Kylian Mbappe doesn't go nuclear in the Champions League for Real Madrid, and I expect he will, because I'm not a doubter of Mbappe's talent. I'm not a doubter of Mbappe's quality. And I believe Real Madrid will be much better under Xabi Alonso than they were under Carlo Ancelotti. But if Kylian Mbappe and Madrid don't go nuclear next year in the Champions League, there are big conversations to be had. I mean, potentially there's already big conversations. If you had told Kylian Mbappe when he joined Real Madrid at the start of the year, this is how the season would pan out, that you would leave and everything would transpire the way it did, he would probably laugh. He'd probably say, yeah, funny. Okay, when do we win our first trophy? It's crazy, man. I'm not obsessed with Mbappe. I'm not obsessed whatsoever. This is a guy I've been calling the best player in the world for the last 3 years. It's not obsessed because I'm telling the truth, my boy. It's not obsessed because I'm telling you the truth. This is bad, man. It's not an unfair narrative. It's an absolutely true narrative. You cannot flip the script now, guys. You cannot change the storyline. Don't tell me it's an unfair narrative or it's an untrue narrative. Everything I just said is exactly how it panned out. There has not been an exaggeration. There hasn't been a lie that I've said. Everything I said is exactly how it went. I didn't exaggerate anything. Bro, if you don't like it, so be it. But that's how it worked out. I didn't say it was all his fault, but it happened. It happened, guys, and that's a failure. This season for Kylian Mbappe and Real Madrid is a failure. But hey, this isn't about Mbappe. This isn't about Mbappe. It's about PSG, and they have made history. What a final, bro. What a final. Do we want to talk a little bit about Inter? What does this mean for Inter? I think this means it's the end of the road for a lot of these guys. I think Simone Inzaghi leaves. I think Al Hilal is almost a certainty because this is a final, right? There's ways of losing. When Inter lost to City 1-0 in the Champions League final a few years ago, I think Inzaghi would have looked at that final and said, look, this is a bad day, but we played really good in this game. We went toe-to-toe with the best team in the world. We can get back to this stage. The journey's not over. Let's add a few players. Let's build. This is one of those finals that if I'm Simone Inzaghi, I'm looking at my players. I'm looking at the fashion in which just got destroyed. I'm looking at the age of most of this squad. And I'm probably thinking to myself, this is it. It's the end of the line. I can't take this team any further. It's a shame it had to end like this. But the only way is down from here. Inzaghi has to leave. He himself has to take that Al Hilal job. I'm sorry. And for people saying, oh, he shouldn't go to Saudi when every team wants him. Being a manager and going to Saudi is very different from being a player and going to Saudi. Because if you're a player, you go 2 years. Maybe you go at 28, you come back at 30. You've just wasted 2 years of your prime. The athletic side of the game there. You can lose it. As a manager, Inzaghi is not going to be a different coach in 2 years than he is now. He can go to Al Hilal, make generational money, come back, and the same teams in world football are going to want him. If I'm Inzaghi, I think you're an idiot if you don't go to Saudi Arabia. Take that job. But as for the players, I think it's the end of the line for a lot of them. Acerbi, that's it for him, bro. You're not seeing Acerbi in a Champions League final again. Mkhitaryan, Çalhanoğlu, Darmian, Di Marco, Lautaro. I think that's the last time you guys ever see them in a Champions League final. And I feel for them, and I feel for Inter, because this season, it's actually very reminiscent to Leverkusen in 2002. Yeah, 2002. The reason Leverkusen are called Neverkusen, or they're nicknamed Neverkusen by fans, is because that season, Bayer Leverkusen were basically 4 games away, no, 3 games even, from winning the treble. Last day of the season in the Bundesliga. If they win the Bundesliga. They lost. They lost on the final day. The cup final, I think against Schalke, they lost on that. And in the Champions League final, they lost to Real Madrid. So in the space of 3 games, they went from potential treble winners to winning nothing at all. For Inter, it's very, very similar. They went from a team that were on the cusp of the treble, leading Serie A in the Coppa Italia semifinal against a very poor AC Milan team, and in a Champions League final. And in the space of 3 to 4 games, they have thrown it all away. Now, is it a choke job from Inzaghi? Is it a choke job from the players? Does this mean Inzaghi's not a great coach? Look, I mean, there's an element of choking for sure. They should never have lost to Milan the way they did, because Milan this year have been an unmitigated disaster. However, I think you have to look at it with a bit of context, man. This is an Inter team with horrific depth. And in January, I think Inter's management, Inter's ownership did a terrible job of equipping the side properly to last the rest of the season. This was a team that in January time had shown they could potentially make a deep run in 3 different competitions, but the depth was poor. And ownership needed to do something there. Even AC Milan's ownership looked at the season and said, okay, let me give you Joao Felix. Let me give you Kyle Walker. Let me give you Jimenez. Sure, 2 of them didn't really work out, but at least they made an effort to go bring those players in. Inter were on their knees for depth. No depth at fullback. No adequate depth at fullback. No depth at striker that was properly actually providing. Taremi has been pretty poor for most of this season. Arnautovic, at his current age, is a disaster. And Inter did absolutely nothing. And most of their season fell apart this year when Thuram and Dumfries were rolled out for big parts of the season. They lost in the Coppa Italia semifinal when the 2 of them were out, and they really dropped ground in the Serie A title race when those 2 went out. Because quite simply, they just don't have the depth. So I think they've been massively let down by ownership this year. But also, guys, it's an old team. It is an old team. I read a stat out at one point in the season that practically half of Inter's team are over 33 years old. Some of them are over 35 years old, and they all play heavy minutes. And then finally, you look at how much has really been invested in this squad, bro. How much has Inzaghi really spent on this team? Thuram is a free agent. Pavard, to be fair, costs what? 25, 30 million. The rest of them were either bought before him, or they were bought with scraps, man. Young Summer was 7 mil. Like, it's a cheap team. It's a team that really doesn't have a lot of star power in the side. Now, compared to the rest of Serie A, they have a very good team. They have the best team in Serie A. I get that. And in a way, their failure domestically, they have to look at themselves in the mirror, because they should never have lost the Serie A title race to Napoli this season. Napoli do not have a better team than Inter. I agree. And Milan do not have a better team than them either. But I'm sorry, for this Inter team to make the Champions League final 2 out of the last 3 years, even despite the way they've lost it tonight, guys, no one can rewrite history. It's a massive accomplishment for this club. Because financially, they can't compete with these teams. They can't compete with Barcelona in terms of competing for the best players. They can't compete with Arsenal. They can't compete with City. They can't compete with Real Madrid. They can't compete with Bayern. And yet, 2 of the last 3 years in the finals, they've made it. It's a disappointing way to go out, especially this way. And like I said, it's probably the last dance for a lot of these guys. But I don't think we can rewrite how special what Inter have done over the last 3 years is, man. As disappointing as it is for them to finish trophyless, let's not rewrite history. This is not a vintage team. It's not. But guys, I think that's it for me. It's been an amazing Champions League run. Honestly, like I said, one of my favorite Champions League campaigns I've ever had the privilege of covering. Throughout, PSG's run has been brilliant. Inter have had a remarkable run as well too. Barca gave us so many great games. Arsenal's game against Real Madrid is one that I don't think their fans will ever forget. It's the first year we ever had the Champions League group phase as one big table. I think that was a really interesting concept, and I think it was a win overall. Overall, it's one of my favorite Champions League campaigns. I think there's so many great games. And it's a shame that the final ended this way, but I don't think that can rewrite what we saw throughout the season, man. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for following me along this year. Thank you guys for subbing on YouTube. Thank you guys for tuning into the watch-alongs, for tuning into the match reviews. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope you guys have as well, too. And I'll see you guys very, very soon. Peace.